joined today, well, tonight his time, morning my time, by Leighton Morgan, a very proud Welshman and somebody who's had a long involvement in rugby. And good evening, Leighton.
Good evening to you, David. Lovely to see you again.
Yeah, it is. It's been a long time. Just for the benefit of the listeners and the viewers, just give us a little taste of your rugby background.
Okay, well, started all those years ago. I had this huge passion after finishing playing the game. I had a huge passion for coaching and started off with what we called one of our second-class clubs in Wales at the time, Leighton Rugby Football Club. Then I was invited to go down and coach Llanelli under-21s because the Welsh Rugby Union for a period of time felt that they needed to focus and bring on under-21 rugby. Had great 2 years there. Lots of people who went on to play for Wales from that group. And then I was invited to go and coach Llanelli Rugby Football Club with Gareth Jenkins, who later became the national coach, as you will be aware. And then I had a tough decision to make, being a family man, whether I stayed in coaching and took that gamble with that precarious sort of type of employment, or should I go and work for the Welsh Rugby Union and get involved in developing the game that way in what would seem to be a more stable environment. Had a good run there, about 12, 13 years with the union. But then they got rid of me anyway, so maybe I should have gone into coaching.
What about your playing career?
Playing career, not at the top level really. Caught the odd game here and there with Neath Rugby Football Club, the odd little game with Llanelli, but mainly what we would call in those days a second-class rugby player, playing for the villages that fed into the first-class game that we had at that time.
Yes. And of course, in 2002, I think it was, upon my arrival in Wales, you were, still heavily involved in your coaching, and we changed the game in Wales quite substantially, getting down from 12 teams down to 4 teams, and that had the sort of immediate effect of improving the national team. But because we went to 4 regions, but sadly, the Welsh people never really took to the regions and still don't take to the regions. And you say that you come from that sort of heartland of Wales and Welsh rugby. What do you put that down to?
Narrow-mindedness. That doesn't help us. We're steeped in that tradition. We've always been a club-based nation, if you like. We had 16 merit teams many years ago, I remember. Then we came down to 12. Then we came to 9. And then when you came in, we had this tough decision. What were we going to do in terms of preparing the national team as best we could? And we got to 4, 5 initially. Then we lost one, if you recall. We became 4. But the supporters, for whatever reason, have always sort of found it very difficult to embrace the regional concept. Whereas in Ireland, for example, they've always had provincial rugby, so they weren't changing anything. They had 4 provinces, we had 9 clubs. 4 regions was a difficult one to swallow. I still don't fully understand why, but that's where we're at.
Yes, and going down to 4 regions was, I think, the right thing to do at the time, because Wales needed to reset where they were in the professional era. And it was difficult at the time, but we got there. And I think within about 18 months, Wales won its first Grand Slam in 27 years under Mike Ruddock. And then they've continued to do very well, on the international stage, which I think is terrific for everybody that was involved back in those days that took a lot of flack for going to fewer number of teams. But perhaps it's still not right for today. Perhaps there needs to be a rethink about, where Wales should go. For example, should the professional game completely be split away from the amateur game or the community game? Should there be fewer teams in Wales at the professional level, so that they can afford to keep all of the top players in Wales? Because the wage bills wouldn't be as high. The income would suffer a small dip because of the fewer number of teams. But yeah, there are a lot of things to debate about where Wales should go. Do you have a view?
I do have a view. I think you're absolutely right, David. Going to those 4 teams has certainly helped the national team big time. I think we've had 3 Grand Slams since 2005, 2 championships, got to the semi-final of 2 Rugby World Cups. So the national team has really done well in that period. But if you look at the performances of the regions in that top tier competition in the Northern Hemisphere, our teams that play in the European Cup have only managed to come out of the pool stages on 3 occasions in 14 seasons. There are some years when only 2 of our teams perhaps are in the Premier competition, the other 2 are in the Challenge Cup. This year we had 3 in the Premier and the Dragons only in the Challenge Cup, but none of the teams have come out from there. If you look at how do you arrive at the number, the magic number, it must be about the number of players you can put to the competition, the amount of money that you've got, and the fixtures that you can find for those teams. But there is really a strong debate, or should be a strong debate, on whether we should go to 3 regions or maybe 2, because Edinburgh and Glasgow have only got 2, and they are better than our regional teams. At the moment, I was looking earlier before coming on, the league this year, the United Rugby Championship, the Scarlets are 6th, the Blues are 9th, the Ospreys are 12th, and the Dragons are 15th, I believe, in that league of 18. Or in that league of 18, yeah, 16 rather. And it really does need shaking up because we're not competitive in either leagues. And then when the international program comes around, and then we've got to call on our 2nd-tier players, the Irish just whip us as if it's schoolboys against their professional guys. So we haven't got the depth. We need to grow that depth, and we need to seriously look at the numbers of professional teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult one, and I've been very vocal at times on my views about Welsh rugby, but I temper those insofar as it's nothing I can do to actually guide the way in Welsh rugby should be going. I have some views, obviously, and given that the regions haven't worked, I've been advocating now for quite some time that it's most likely time to accept the fact that the regions are not going to work as regions, because they've not embraced the people of Wales have not embraced them, and even the change in demographics, the number of younger people that when we first put it in, now that's nearly 20 years ago, and so there's a whole new generation of people that still are not supporting the regions in the numbers that are required to make them successful. So perhaps it's time to reassess. I mean, I think that's one of the issues, is that when you put something in place, it may not always be there forever. You have to have a look at how good it's going, because if you don't, then you run the risk of perhaps maintaining something that is certainly not sustainable. So, but with the need to have the Welsh national team performing at a high level, because that's where the focus really is these days in a lot of countries, and especially in Wales, it may be better to go back to a club-based system and only have 2 or 3 clubs replace regions. That'd be the same players, but people in the valleys, they say, like, for example, the valleys north of Cardiff, when they were Cardiff, they would say, oh yes, but the Pontypridd supporters wouldn't support Cardiff, but they did. They went down and watched Cardiff play, They just didn't watch the Blues play. So perhaps it might be that if you had, for example, just picking three teams, along the M4 corridor, like Newport, Cardiff, and Llanelli, a combination of Llanelli and the O's, that they will get up in arms when they see this, because they are very proud. The Osprey supporters, in actual fact, really were the only bunch that got in behind them. But of course, that's now fallen well away. So that would be a solution. I'm not saying it's the solution, but it could be a solution to things going forward. And as you know, I wanted to have a team in North Wales at one time when I first came there, but
you did.
And I think that still would have worked, but those days are not going to happen. So now it's a matter of, and then of course, if you were to do that, you might just set yourself up for a return to playing against the enemy across the bridge, the English, and in their competition, because at some point in time, I think the English clubs are going to have to sit up and say, look, we owe it to the rest of the rugby in the UK to actually expand our competition to perhaps take in, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland, but certainly Wales, and
back to that debate of a British league.
Yeah, British and Irish League. So, but even if that wasn't possible, if it was just to be Wales, and just let South Africa play, the Irish and the Scottish teams, and then see Italy should be playing in the French competition right next door to them.
Exactly.
So, but that takes a lot of people to move from very entrenched positions.
Well, the thing is as well, see, David, gates are really a problem. I'm a TV watcher these days. I don't go to too many live games, but the stadiums look quite empty. And then people say, the problem is we don't have any away support. But then I look at the Irish teams, you see, when they play at home, they've been expanding their grounds. They can get 25,000 in stadiums. They can get 30,000 when Leinster play at home. So I think it's a combination of a lack of success. We've not been able to be as competitive as we would like to have been for whatever reason at regional level. We have had some decent gates when we did get to quarterfinals and on a few occasions semi-finals, but for the most part we've not been doing that, and therefore the gates are quite ridiculous, really. It is, if we were living on gates alone, we'd never sustain professional rugby.
No, that's correct. And actually, I did an interview with Robbie Deans about Japanese rugby, which you can find on the internet, on YouTube, if anybody's interested. The Moff cast, if you go there, you'll see the interviews with Robbie Deans. And once COVID's gone, they'll be getting back to 30,000 gates to watch, his team, which is the most successful team in Japan. But a lot of the top 6 in their league get really big crowds, and that's a club. Well, they're not clubs so much as they're owned by companies but it's however, that's where my thinking about going back to a club-based system might work. And you can have the argument. I think there are 2 clubs that would immediately be there, and they're the 2 clubs that gave me the most trouble when I was trying to get to four professional teams. Llanelli and Cardiff, who threatened to sue us, and we had no money. We were broke at the time, and so they wanted to stand alone, and they did. So they've been standalone. Then the debate comes: okay, do you have a team at Newport, who traditionally have not been that very strong even in this professional era, or do you go to Swansea, which is only just a few k's away from Llanelli, but that's no different to Bath and Gloucester, I guess, being so close together. So
I think if you looked at the logistics, it would make sense for me to have a team in Newport, because of the huge population in the Gwent Valleys there. Cardiff being the city, I think it's obvious that one should be there. And then it's Llanelli or Swansea further down the track here in the west. That would be ideal. And maybe, as you talked about in your day, and there's still a lot of people who believe it could work, have a development team up in North Wales. Because we need to tap into the huge numbers up there as well. Even though rugby isn't very strong, we need to make it stronger and get many more players playing the game. We could even send up guys who are not quite ready down south to play there until they are ready. And that would be perhaps an interesting concept as well. But you are right. It's not working. What we've got now isn't working, David.
And I actually yearn for those days again, but not only from Wales, from Australia, the way they used to play, from France, which is the way they're playing now.
Brilliant.
You know, South Africa have always played 10-man rugby. England don't know what style they want to play.
A long way to continue.
Yeah, but at the moment, everybody wants to play what I call McDonald's rugby. So if you go into a McDonald's anywhere in the world, it all tastes the same, and it's the same with rugby. When you look at rugby, everybody is playing what I term as McDonald's rugby, and I lament that, because the great thing about this game, and then everybody says, oh, we should have a global season, which I never understand. I don't understand what that about. Now this leads me nicely into a conversation. In the top of the screen there, you'll see the logo for 11s rugby, which is a new game that it's a new version of the game. 11 players over 11-minute quarters, so 44 minutes. It's an authentic game of rugby. Six forwards, 5 backs. So you're going to need all the different sizes in the forward, sizes of players in the front row, in a second row, and in the one back row. And it's based on simplicity and fun, and most of all safety as well. So we've put. I'm not going to be critical of 15s, because 11s is different. It sits right in between 7s and 15s, right in the middle of the two. And I think that 11s could prove to be very popular as a stepping stone. People want to try the game, or clubs, for example. And in Wales, we know that that's a bit of a problem, getting numbers. So if you've only got to find 11 players with 6 on the bench, you've only got just 2 more than a 15-a-side game. So I had a light bulb moment in the shower one day, and I said to myself, Moff, why are you trying to retain the ruck as it is currently being played? Because it's, if you have a look at the Law 15 in World Rugby law books, what we play bears no resemblance to the law at all. So I said, just get rid of it. But the reason for that is that most of the breakdowns occur at the tackle. 99% of the breakdowns occur at a tackle, obviously. And that's when things start to go wrong, because everybody piles in, they go off their feet, and nobody knows what's going on, and the referees don't, and certainly the spectators don't. So I said, well, get rid of the ruck and put that phase of play in the tackle where it belongs. And so then, a tackle is defined as a player carrying the ball who is tackled by one or more of the opposition players. Knee touches the ground. At that point in time, the tacklers have to immediately release the player. Immediately means immediate, not 2 or 3 seconds. And the ball carrier must either pass the ball or place it on the ground. Right. So then we've got a tackle and the ball's on the ground. So any player can then pick it up, do what they want with it, but they can't go off their feet. And what's important is nobody else can go off their feet. If you're off your feet, you're liable to penalty and you're out of the game. And we will penalize those players for being off their feet. So anybody joining has to join with their head above their hips. That particular game, part of the game. So therefore, it's going to be much more open for people to be able to see what's going on, referees to be able to adjudicate on it, and it is going to result in a lot quicker. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you again. You know,
likewise.
It's been a long time, and we've stayed in touch. But I've now started my podcasting career, and I thought it'd be great just to get you on and to get the Welsh perspective. You know,
it's been a pleasure, David. Thanks for having me on. And yes, we have kept in touch, and I'm hoping we can keep in touch going forward. I will continue to look at your podcast with interest. I enjoyed Robbie Deans, and I enjoyed, was it KR you call it?
Oh yeah, Kevin Roberts. Yeah,
yeah, that was good as well. I'm sure there's plenty more interesting.
Oh yes, I've got a few. I've got a few lined up. So good to see you, mate. Okay.
Good to see you. Stay safe.
And you too, and you as well.